Welcome to Memory Card, a level 30 games podcast that takes place at looking at the newest titles while drawing a line back on the classics. I'm your host, Drew, and with me today I have, as always, the delectable, lovable Tom.
Ooh, delectable. I like it. All right, I'll be delectable for you.
I think it's that Bowser Jr. shirt, or Baby Bowser. I always forget what his issue is, where his name is. I feel like he's the current generation of kids that's like, I'm going to change my name every other day. Nintendo, good job. Speaking of Nintendo, Tom and I are awaiting the release date for Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave, which I am looking forward to getting back into, and I think Tom can agree. So what we want to talk about are some things that go along with some of the games that have influenced it. So this two-part memory card, slot 1 and slot 2, will actually be classic games and looking towards the future of what this franchise is going to do and how it's going to invigorate and get more people to buy the game. Obviously, Nintendo's had a long, great track record when it comes to Fire Emblems and them being rated at a very high performance. Which one's not?
But did they? Well, so I don't want to retread too much ground here because the history of this franchise is out there. But some of the earlier titles were very well received, and of course, it took a while for the games to come over from Japan. But the first two, outside of the Game Boy Advance one, which I think we're going to hit primarily in slot 2, which was the first Western release of that game, did quite well. And then they very quickly pivoted to releasing Fire Emblem on their home consoles, the GameCube and then the Wii. And those were not received as well for a plethora of reasons and almost killed the franchise. So while we've had a very high string of highs, I think the lows were apparently detrimental enough where Nintendo had said at one point, hey, your next game needs to be a banger or it's done.
Okay, well, that's fair. It's interesting that like the GameCube one is on the Virtual Console and a copy of it sells for Boku bucks, and people love it for its nostalgia. I know it was the first one to make you in that 3D realm, but to talk about a banger, right? Today we're going to talk about Fire Emblem Awakening, which came out about 14 years ago, which is shocking. When I booted up my DS the other day and both Tom and I compared our hourage, I had about 45 hours spent on Awakening and Tom had about 30 hours. And this was a game that you could take on the go, just like the GBA one, but again, not many people knew at the time the GBA one, whereas the DS had somewhat of a track record, whether it's rocky or peaks and valleys or whatever was going on depending on the game. This was one that you could... It's funny because my average playtime, I didn't look at yours, but mine was a half an hour. So it was
Mine was an hour.
Okay. It was a very easy game to like play a battle, fold the DS up, put it away, walk to work, go to your job, go to school, whatever, open it up again, play for another half hour. And that's what I've always liked about tactical games is you don't have to invest a ton of time at one sitting, as Tom and I have come to realize recently when we were playing Yotai. It was like you had to invest 4 hours in order to get anything done.
Yeah, that was definitely a game where like playing for 40 minutes, I was like, I can travel somewhere and watch a cutscene, and that might be it. And of course, just to drop it, because I think you forgot to mention the specific title, we are talking about Fire Emblem Awakening for the 3DS. That is a banger of a game. And you hit on so many things that I was just like, oh, I have something.
Sorry.
There's a thing there. No, it's okay, because you hit a lot of points. I have to tell this story, of course, because to your first point in being able to play in short bursts, 1,000%. I booted it up last night. And on 3 separate occasions, I was just like, okay, I've had enough. Closed the clamshell, put it down, started watching TV, and I was like, you know what? I could do another battle. Picked it back up, went a little bit longer. which was really, really cool. And now, as I told you today privately, I was like, Drew, I think I might have to finish this game again because it's just really good. But so short story time, because we don't get to talk about this. This is the first time on Memory Card that we've let off with a handheld game that's not the Switch, right? So like, and for the audio listeners, I apologize. I'm holding up my 3DS, which, by the way, comparatively, is the same size as my cell phone, and that's wild. This actually fits in your pocket, and I brought it to school that way, just in my coat pocket with my hand. Like, I miss now having a portable system like this that's really portable, that doesn't require a big bulky case to protect it, and it goes in my computer bag, and I have to, like, this was really great. Sadly, I also had a student today ask what this was because they had never heard of it before, and I was trying to tell them, oh, it's a 3DS. And they're like, oh, is that like a Switch? And I was like, well, it was a Switch before a Switch. And they were very perplexed by the system. And then I told them it did 3D. Could we just talk about that for a second? Drew, have you played this game since you booted it up the other day?
Not in 3D, but I have played it.
So I had the 3D off by default because I guess at some point I was like, well, this is obnoxious. But I turned it on yesterday for the first time, and I was like in a decade and a half, and I was like, oh my God, like this is actually pretty. Like it was more cool now than I feel like it was when the system came out. Even though a lot of games eventually just kind of ignored the 3D aspect of the system, but like the little vignettes and diorama style like cutscenes in this game were just kind of cool to watch in 3D, and even the simple like layering of the character name and then the artwork of the character and then the scene behind them like really popped. Like visually this game was cool. The only thing that I have a problem with visually is that all the characters have like feet that are like chibi feet, and it really just annoys the hell out of me for some reason.
I mean, that's just going back to sprite work, whereas now we have full-fledged characters. I will admit that I enjoyed that, and I'm glad that we had two screens at the time for this game. Because I don't know how we got things accomplished on the GBA or the Switch with like I'd like to have the info and like hit percentages and all that at the same time as I have the map.
Right? Yes, that was very cool. I also, the way that the game kind of introduces concepts to you makes it really easy to go back and find those. So like when they finally get around to introducing the weapon triangle, I was like, okay, it's been a while. So I'm going to leave the like info page up on the bottom screen so that when I move in, I can see like, all right, what am I going for? Who do I want to move towards this enemy? Like that was really cool. And I'm like, dang, we had it good. I miss it.
I go back to old games, and like Fire Emblem literally is like, let's make rock paper scissors in 3 different areas, right? You had axes, swords, and lances, and one was better than the other. You had fire, wind, and thunder, and then in this one you actually had anima, light, and dark. And so the elements are again a triangle of who's better than whatever else. And I just like,
you also had different unit types as well, right? Like you'd have your Pegasus units, and they would be weak to any archers. You also had
forgot about the archers.
Very like tanky knight characters, or they were on horseback. Or I'm sorry, I would strike that. The knight characters, which
Templars.
Right. And then you had your horses who were good for mobility and stuff. And so like there is a lot of tactics and strategy pumped into this game in some really cool ways.
And I remember when we were going back through this, the mobile game, which I played for how many years, had all of those features. And what was nice was, instead of the lineage of Chrom and Robin in this game, you could adapt everyone into one game. I did like that this was one game that the person was kind of like unnamed, and you could...
Yes, you created them.
Yeah, and you were them.
Yeah.
But Tom and I had this discussion that out of all of the Fire Emblems, like if you picked a random person, we probably wouldn't know their names just because of like how many people there are and how many games we've played and the time we've invested elsewhere. But the one character that I loved to death had a pot on his head, and he was the strongest guy imaginable in this game.
What was his name? I don't remember off the top of my head.
I don't know anyone named this, but it was Donnell.
It sounds vaguely familiar. Was he kind of like the oafish, like dumb jock kind of trope?
No, he's just like a little kid with a pot on his head. And
okay.
for whatever reason, if you used him and leveled him up, he became one of the most powerful guys in the game. He literally had a pot on his head the entire time, but his like counter strikes would just like crit people and kill them instantly. It was just hilarious. So as much as I love a tactical game, right, it reminds me back in the day of, Tom and I were just talking about this, but Advanced Wars, which my first installment actually was on the original Game Boy as like an illegal ROM that was Japanese. I didn't know what I was doing, but it was moving around a map and being able to tactically maneuver units and defeat them. The nice part with Fire Emblem is it's always been a very visual game where you're like, even in a pixel art, you really feel like you're on the battlefield, like managing units to win the battle.
Yeah, and the with this one specifically, anytime you did an attack, it would kind of cut to an animation specifically for that attack, right? You against your enemy and them against you. But this was the first time where it would kind of go from that top-down grid view of your battlefield with your sprite characters to your 3D rendered models and kind of show a little bit more of the action. You can even switch to a first-person perspective in that little thing. You can move the camera around. I don't know why you would want to do that. You can also like pause it and I guess maybe take pictures. I'm at the point where even in a replay, I'm like, I'm good. I skip most of it because I just like to speed up things. And there's even an option in the menu to just turn them off entirely. And I guess if you really wanted to play quickly, you could. This game does have a lot of customizable options like that to make it a little bit more catered to how you want to play it. But yeah, I mean, this was born from Advance Wars or Famicom Wars, which was the original Japanese release. They're both made by Intelligent Systems, and Advance Wars apparently did do well enough with the Western audience where Nintendo said, hey, take a chance with Fire Emblem, and that kind of became the evolution of the series, and as we know, became very popular after, or thanks to, Awakening, and then sadly, Advance Wars kind of fell off the face of the planet after, I think, the 2 DS installments? I don't think it even made a 3DS game, right?
No, it did not. It had 2 GBAs and 2 DS games.
Yeah. Okay.
And then
a Switch reboot.
Yeah, of the same games, but
yes.
it looks beautiful. Like I love what they did with that. You talked about customization, and the one thing that I've always hated about, and we'll get to in slot 2, but is luckily in this game they built in classic versus what was the other mode? Casual mode. And I'm a huge proponent of, like, I need my guys to survive the entire time. So permadeath has always been, like, the most frustrating thing in the older Fire Emblems, where you have to restart the battle to make sure that you can survive and carry your guy on to the next day so that you have enough units to be able to do it. But it's always nice in video games nowadays that they give you those quality of life settings to improve things. The classic mode made it much nicer the casual mode made it much nicer to enjoy the game and not have to worry about permadeath.
Yeah, and video game difficulty is something that always seems to be a topic of conversation, especially every time a new Souls game comes out or something like that, where give us an option to toggle on your difficulty mode. But it was pretty hotly contested at the time. I think it was one of those options that they had left out of the game till the end, when they said, hey, this is a chance to maybe let casual people pick this up and not fear a terrifyingly difficult game. And I guess it worked to their advantage. So it's becomes one of those things where I'm with you. I will say unabashedly, I get very attached to these characters and I don't want to see them go away. And I have played the game both ways. And so I do have those impactful moments where when you lose a unit that you've kind of grown attached to and you're working on like side story stuff with, or they're having conversations with your characters, you do kind of build a small rapport there. And it is kind of painful when they're gone and like you kind of like have to mourn them, but then carry on with the rest of your battle. I enjoy playing with casual mode a lot, and I think that did a huge service to the game to kind of let us choose. It's just the people that go, no, it should be hard because it's always been hard. Like, dudes, you can have it that hard, right? You can make it. Don't. Or you're freaking out because I have the option to pick. You can do it. Like that's where I feel like that conversation of difficulty can get a little just. All right, it's just people sniffing their own farts at that point, saying that they beat the game when it used to be hard, but because I played it on casual and didn't lose any units, I guess I'm the wuss. But that's how I want to enjoy my game, and this does a great job of allowing me to do that.
Yeah, I also think it comes with like time and age, right? The older we get, sometimes we don't have the grueling hours to put it on the hardest difficulty to master every little nuance of a game. And especially games nowadays have so many intricate systems that are going on in the background that you have to get that optimal build and that like perfect percentage in order to be successful in whatever scenario. It can be a lot. I mean, I'm a wuss right along with you because I put it on casual because I just wanted to enjoy the story. I wanted to enjoy the combat, the characters, their interactions. Speaking of, like, towards the end of the game, right, if you had a synergy with someone and a certain rating, you could then end up inheriting and marrying someone and having children.
Yes.
And so there's this whole inheritance system where you could take the best of two units and hopefully not have some bastard child, but have this child that took the best of both worlds to be super powerful to take into the end game. I think this is like one of the first games that I actually cared about DLC and wanted to explore other realms that were appearing.
Yeah, which was very overwhelming because if you do play far enough into the game again, I know it's been 15 years almost, but there's like all the DLC, I think it's just kind of there. And so like I started accepting it and I'm like, shit, I don't know what it's doing to the game. So maybe we'll just ignore this for later. But it was a surprising change for Nintendo to have DLC, but also DLC for this franchise that I was kind of on its dying breath. So I think the developers were like, we're going to do everything to try and make this work. And it worked. So good for them.
Yeah, I mean, we've gotten 5-ish Switch games.
Yeah, there was two
Three
Warriors
Houses.
spin-off games, Three Houses, and Engage, which was the latest one, and then Phantom's Weave comes out
Fortune's Weave.
sometime this year.
Yeah, yeah.
Phantom Weave, did I say that right?
Fortune's Weave.
Fortune's Weave, sorry.
Right. So I have 2 questions to pose to you to try and
Sure.
bring this to the new game. The first is, if Nintendo is now making this Nintendo multiverse of movies, right? Do you think Nintendo could break into episodic TV with a franchise like this?
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, and I think it actually sets itself up well for that. I mean, you'd have a kind of a de facto built-in ensemble cast of characters, right? Whether they're pulled directly from games or you start with a really prominent character. I feel like everyone knows Marth, right? Or Lucina or Roy or, have them be in it. And then the secondary cast of characters can be just tethered to the story you want to tell. They can have some really cool callback Easter egg things for fans that go, oh, that was that character from that Japanese game. Like that would be kind of cool. And even not that you would be super into the combat aspects of things, which the TV show would ultimately have to focus on sometimes. But like you can pull plot points and battle moments from the games directly. Like it would be cool to have a full scale war like Game of Thrones style where
That's what I was thinking.
you do kind of focus on a character that's not just leading the charge, but like also at the same time saying, okay, well, you guys go this way because they've got archers up on their towers and we don't want to send our Pegasus units there. Or you go this way because you're our magic users and you're going to take them out from afar. Like you can incorporate certain things there. And of course, you better, stay true to that weapons triangle. So we better not see any sword on sword action, right? It should only exclusively be sword on axe action. Yeah, I mean, I think it could. And if you did it as like, I don't know, an anime. Like, I think that would also work really cool as well, because a lot of all of the cutscenes from the game feature like hand-drawn anime interludes, and that was like, I forgot how really, even on this tiny low definition screen, that like they looked really good. And I would love to kind of see that full fledged in a TV series. I think it'd be a great fit for it. They did try. They did try at one point, very long time ago.
Oh, did they?
Yes, they put out 2 episodes, and it was so bad they just stopped making them.
Yeah. Well,
I don't think they ever came west though. I think it was Japan only.
Well, in order for them to like break through what you were mentioned in anime, I honestly think the combat, if they took straight from Arcane, like everyone would watch that. That show is just phenomenal. The way it's animated, the story, like I really do feel like Fire Emblem could fit into that writing style and the art, and the full scale war of Game of Thrones would be amazing.
Yeah, I'd be in on that 100%.
The second question I got to pose to you is, of all the mechanics that we've dealt with in the Fire Emblem series, what is like your wish list for Fortune's Weave? What would you want to return? What new features would you want to see? Because there's like hardly any details about this game.
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you kind of look, like using Awakening as kind of a new turning point for the franchise, right? Obviously, they've always had a big emphasis on not just the tactical aspect of it, the combat aspect of it, but also there are a lot of like very lighthearted moments in this game, like sometimes in the middle of battle. And they're really smart in how they do some of their music cues, right? Like I was on a battlefield and I ran into a green character on the screen, and that usually indicates that's a character that you can either recruit for that battle or just long term. And like the music pivoted immediately, and it was like light and cheery and fun. I was like, okay, cool. This is a lighthearted moment in the middle of this battle. I hope stuff like that continues to carry over. I do feel that when you fast forward to the 2 most recent Switch releases, Three Houses was a tremendous success, but a fairly big diversion from the core of what makes Fire Emblem Fire Emblem. The battles I thought were still great. They weren't as tactically inventive or different enough from one another that I felt there was a lot of challenge there. But I also really liked the stuff they added with the calendar system and getting to know your characters and choosing who you want to spend time with. I thought the tea parties were a little fan service-esque, and I didn't quite like that as much, but it was still nice to get benefits from that. I think if they were able to keep some of those social elements to the game, from Three Houses or borrowed from like that Persona style, I think that would be really great. I think they need to tone it back a little bit and focus a little bit more on what Engage did correctly, which was having really interesting characters with really interesting battle sequences, really smart use of the terrains and things. So I think if you were able to balance, like take the best of both of those games and put it in this, I think you'd have something really special.
Yeah, I agree. I was thinking while you were talking about that is like, what is the must-have in the new game? And
I mean, the must-have, truthfully, and not to cut you off, sorry, is just you got to have, I think, just good, well-written characters, because you can take this style of game and put in, bland characters with uninteresting dialogue, and the tactics would still be really good and fun and interesting. But like part of what I think makes it compelling is you're not just moving pieces on a battlefield, you're moving names of characters that you are slowly get familiar with over the course of the game on the battlefield, and that gives it a lot of heft that I think gets overlooked. So having really strong writing and interactions between those characters, I think is key for me.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would like is a little bit more of a focus on fewer characters, because I feel like Awakening brought a giant group of characters into one game, and it got even more with all those DLCs that I was like, I'm a little overwhelmed by how many units I have now and who I'm using, or like I probably favored Donnell for like 40 of my 45 hours because I got him so early. But
pothead. You like potheads.
He is the pothead.
Well, also remember too that like that whole system is built on characters that up until this point of the series, you might have lost in battle. And so the reason why it throws so many characters at you is because if you lose half of them every time you go into battle, you still have kind of like a surplus of ones you can use.
Oh yeah.
So having like 20
wuss
characters
factor.
that kind of sit on the bench is like, all right, I'm really attached to these 12. Sorry, rest of the team, you seem cool. And occasionally you throw it in there, but like, you know, I think that's
cool.
part of why.
You're cool. Screw you. You're cool. I'm going to battle.
All I know is in my first playthrough, I married some chick that also turns into a dragon. And then we had a kid who also turned into a dragon or something. And I think I turned into a dragon. There's dragons.
I was going to say, you felt left out because you didn't turn into a dragon. But your son and wife did.
Always the odd one out.
Is there anything else we can mention about Fire Emblem's Awakening?
I hope it comes to the Nintendo Switch Virtual Console in some capacity. I hope they bring 3DS games to it some way and allow this to be played.
Please.
Or maybe even like do a Switch port of it and find a way to make it work, because it is a really good game. And this comes from a time where a 30-hour on-the-go adventure was very hefty, and but that pales in comparison to your 50 to 80-hour RPGs. So to have something very digestible that you said earlier you can play in short bursts would be really, really cool. It's a great game. Play it if you can.
I think it helps when we were younger that we had a commute and we're able to play certain things every once in a while, as opposed to driving to work and not being able to. So now we just listen to audiobooks.
Or this podcast.
That's true too. I do that quite often. Now that we've moved, attacked, and ended our turns in slot 1, we'll delete some Metroid data from last month and see you in our Fire Emblem game that brought us the most nostalgia. I think you already know what it is.